Welcome, everyone. We're back with Class and Jules for episode 5, post-championship series edition. Jules, excited to have you back on. Excited to talk a little bit about the tournament, talk Chaos Redwoods, and talk about our other thoughts. We just finished up a great 3 weeks of PLL Championship series.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be back on here talking a little bit about it. It was definitely a fun 3 weeks. It kind of it felt long, but it felt short at the same time. And I know the guys definitely felt that way as well. Obviously, from the fan perspective, it was super exciting to see so much lacrosse condensed in a short amount of time and at such a high level. I think from our perspective, talking to the guys and really kind of knowing a little bit more about what's going on, I think it's getting missed how tough, physically that was for these guys. When you talk about the course of a season, last year playing 10 games over the regular season, and you kind of have that week to recover in between these games. And we saw how intense they were, how physical, especially this year, with the rules and how they're letting kind of things go. That it's not easy to do. And how much that really takes a toll on you. I think we saw it over the course of the tournament and, talking to some guys, guys are definitely feeling it. So, I think that I just want to kind of comment a little bit on that. And, I've seen some people say they want to run the tournament back. Let's get it going in the fall. I'm like, man, that was not easy to pull off, definitely on the physical standpoint.
Yeah, totally. And I think also like from that same standpoint, even thinking about, committing, 3 weeks like that where you're locked down, obviously, there's, very, very real possibilities that, throughout the fall and, maybe even to the spring, like we're still dealing, as a country and as a world with this pandemic. But kind of locking down like that for 3 weeks. Not everyone saw the behind the scenes of all the different COVID testing. All the precautions with even simple things as like probably leaving your hotel room to want to go grab a bite to eat. And so that stuff can certainly be missed. And again, hats off to the PLL medical team, the leadership of the PLL. For putting together and pulling this thing off because when you think back, all the planning that it took for the last several months, it's a huge feat. So it's super exciting for the sport.
Absolutely. And I think, talking about, how they really pulled it off, something that really went into it, like the mental side of it, right? Really being thoughtful about everything. And talk about the players, how hard it is to play a game, perhaps lose, perhaps not have a great game. A lot of guys I felt like, had, some ups and downs in the tournament. I think you can kind of really chalk that up sometimes to, talk about you play a game on Saturday, you have a full week to recover, look at the film, get in the training room, maybe go to the field, work on some things that maybe you didn't do well the last game. There's no time in the bubble to do that, right? You're playing that game, you're right into the next game. If there's a matchup that, you didn't do well against on Wednesday, and then there's another guy on Friday that, you have trouble with that you don't get to kind of strategize for, whatever the case is, and kind of fine tune those things, you're jumping right back into that. And I think, we talk about prevailed again in 2021. I mean, ultimately, I think this tournament was built for them. A team like that who really had the most chemistry coming out of last year and then into this season, adding some firepower with Zed and guys like Brad Smith, who definitely gelled pretty quickly and kind of were just plug and play guys almost. I think other teams saw, even with the chaos, when we talked a little bit about them, how it took you guys some time to get going. Once you did get going, you found your stride a little bit, but a team like the Whips who had that stride the whole tournament, and then got to a point where it was crunch time, backs against the wall, you can fall back on that chemistry and the guys that can get the job done. Where, other teams are looking around a little bit to see who can kind of pull things off. It's just, they don't have that chemistry as much. And that's hard to pull a win off and pull a championship off without that time to kind of keep recalibrating and keep developing that chemistry.
Yeah, and you can really think about it too in terms of how guys kind of grow into roles, right? When you have 6 guys on the offense, like as simple as like, all right, like last 15 seconds of a possession, like who's the guy that's taking it to the rack? Last end of a quarter, end of a half, end of a game, who are the guys that we're going to draw up a pick and pop for, or throw back to a step down shot. And some of the rosters, I think it was Chrome. I do think we had a good amount of additions and new faces on our chaos team as well. Your team had some trades. new faces, new guys. And I think that certainly was a benefit to the Whips. When you think about, the veteran leadership with guys like Hawes and Chaney and, Jeremy Sievert, right, stepping up with a big goal. And then you got, Earhart and Coach Staggs, guys who have had, formed a nice core over the last several years. And then you kind of combine that with, great defense that's played together, and a great goalie, great face-off guy. And, but I think that really helps them in that mental piece too. That time where you got to dig in, you're looking around in the huddle, who's going to make the play and stuff. And, I think that certainly in a tournament format, you kind of can tilt that advantage a little bit. And I think like it was exciting, for us with the chaos, and I'm excited to, really get back and train and get back and compete for next summer, seeing, 4 games, like that mental toughness you spoke about, going 0-4, not easy, but kind of sticking together, being with the guys in the group. And, I know guys were, going off in the group chat and different stuff, and obviously more in the locker room, but, kind of sticking together and then making a run in the tournament to get, make that run, and then also just get fired up for what's to come. And we can keep building off that.
Definitely. I mean, Deemer, talk a little bit about, what you guys are looking for 2021. How can you kind of keep building off this momentum? And, what do you think kind of fell through in that championship game? And what are some things you really need to work on this offseason to kind of push into that next level in 2021?
Yeah, totally. I think, watching the 2 games in the playoff and then building into the championship, I thought the chemistry just clicked, and I thought it kind of grew every game. I thought there was really nice balance between the attack and the middies. Jake and Dane and Sergio stepping up and making some nice plays, and then guys like Curtis and Josh, really starting to attack and win matchups. And I thought the ball was moving really well, kind of throughout. And I think kind of building for next year, it's kind of, like if you look at, I feel like some of the possessions in the championship, I think there was, maybe a couple turnovers here and there that, anyone would want back. And I think against a team like the Whips, like in that third quarter into the fourth quarter, like those, couple turnovers, they ended up making us pay. And I think as the unit grows with chemistry and continuing to build, continuing to work on little skill stuff, I thought like guys like Jared and Jack Rowett did an awesome job holding it down. Someone like Zed just, made some great plays. Sometimes you got to like tip your cap in that stuff. And I think it does give us a lot of, excitement and stuff to look forward to, and then some things to build on. So, I'm just looking forward to kind of digging in and seeing where I can, help and add value and how we can keep getting better as a unit.
Definitely. And you talk about adding value, a guy that maybe perhaps plays a similar role as you. I know obviously you're more of a stretch shooter, but a guy like Kevin Buchanan who, just does his job consistently at the pro level, does what he does well, and doesn't try to play out of his role. Talk a little bit about, him. Obviously he's not in the spotlight as much as maybe other players on the Chaos, but, obviously he's been around the pro game for a very long time, is very well respected across the game with it, in regards to his peers. As far as the media goes, maybe doesn't get the attention as much, but I know we've touched on those kind of players, what they mean to teams as far as chemistry goes in the locker room, and how are they able to kind of stay around for so long without being in the spotlight. But on our side, we know how valuable those guys are.
Yeah, totally. I mean, getting the 1 year playing with Kevin was awesome. Kevin's a Baltimore guy, someone that I remember, watching for USA in 2014, being kind of that lefty, compliment to Paul and guys on the right side. And, I think like and I can't speak to Kevin's game earlier as much in his career, but I know like he really had some nice pop to his step and, sweeping across the top side, turning the corner, having that box background. But what I noticed about Kevin's game is like, he is very poised and makes good decisions, but he really takes pride in making guys around him better. So he really does the little things off ball, whether it's sealing a defender, whether it's picking and slipping, whether it's causing some confusion in the 2-man game. And that's someone for me that like, as I continue to work on, stuff in terms of my footwork and dodging and things like that, I take pride in some similar stuff as well. And I've learned a lot from Kevin and kind of watching how he's been able to use, some of those hesitations and pump fakes and even just some stuff in the 2-man game that I think has allowed him to continue to extend his career. And I think watching him was motivating for me this tournament, because I think I can kind of step into that role, add some more in terms of some, stretch shooting and stuff, but I'm going to continue to keep working on in tight game and hands and feeding and stuff so that, guys like Austin Stats and Josh and, anyone playing on that left wing, I can, continue to work well with them with or without the ball. And I think Kevin's a great example for young players of a guy who continues to evolve his game and continues to, find ways to make an impact.
Absolutely. And, talking about him a little bit and what he's able to do in his career. For us on the Redwood side, I just want to talk a little bit about, maybe some things we can do, have some guys more of that kind of chemistry kind of evolving on our offense a little bit. I think kind of looking forward towards 2021, I think that's a big thing on the offensive side of the ball. I thought, you saw it again from our defense as far as, kind of holding down the fort this season. I thought, similar to last year, we went down, specifically talking about this game versus the Whips, we went down again, by a wide margin to kind of start that game. And then, we're in a tough spot, kind of clawing back from there. Obviously the defense, held it down. Jack Neer does Jack Neer things, which is just, it's crazy to watch, honestly. Did the same thing last year. He's pretty much an attackman come championship time and, pulls off these goals and has these, takeaway checks and the energy that he brings to the table. And I think on the offensive side of the ball, I think if we can find more roles, like a guy like Kevin Buchanan, where we can start to work with each other off ball, the fades, the seals, things of that nature to kind of bring out other people's skill sets. You talk about you playing with the guys like Austin Stats and Josh Burton, what they're able to do with the ball in their stick. What can you do then, when you don't have the ball to help set those guys up and put yourself in a position? And I think that's something we should focus on our side of the ball. As far as the Redwoods goes, to kind of take that next step offensively, I think we have all the pieces. And I think it's kind of just building that more team chemistry vibe with what our roles are, knowing what each other do well. Obviously, with the Miles trade, me not being in the lineup, just things were a little shaky as far as, personnel goes and building that chemistry over a 3-week period. A guy like Gleason who just came in, pretty much out of nowhere, and he's trying to step up and make big time plays. And I think that's something we should definitely look forward to for next year. I think, as far as the team dynamic goes, you saw the Redwoods again, down by, 6-7 goals to start, roaring comeback, 1-goal game, tie game. And it's incredible to see the fight and the character in those guys. Something I'm super proud of because I take, a great deal of pride in that as a player in just a fight and kind of being an underdog mentality. And I think it's one of the reasons why I love playing with those guys, because I know that they have that too. A guy like Kavanaugh who, maybe didn't play as much in the championship series for getting injured, and then shows up and, just puts on that 4-goal performance in the championship again, like he does time and time again in his career. Classic Cav. And, I think we took another step as a team, given the circumstances, and for next year, if we can, face off X, if we can get those numbers up a little bit. I saw Granley, post that today, and what that kind of does, we see a guy like Joe Nardella, when he's hot, and he started to turn it on in the championship game, kind of after Brad Smith, had that kind of dunk coming around the cage. It's just such an advantage, right? And it gives your team that confidence. And I think we can kind of take that next step of the X a little bit more and just push for a little bit more wins there, continue to build on that team chemistry. I think as far as the offense goes, and the defense is really in sync. I think we're going to be in a good place kind of going into 2021.
Talk about, I saw Glazner tweeted about Coach Collins and kind of, his impact. Talk about, that a little bit and kind of what maybe he was referencing with that.
Definitely. So, I met Coach Collins last year. He was coaching in New Jersey at some, at a club kind of setting. And he's a great guy. He, he's a team first guy. He's been playing for the Philadelphia Wings as a backup goalie for a couple of years now. He definitely understands the dynamics of a team and what it takes to win. And as far as what the sacrifices go, and I think as a coach kind of moved into the role he was in this year, as a guy coming in new to the locker room, to a team where, talk about the defenses in the league, like, the Whipsnakes who have an established culture on defense and what they want to do and what they want to get done, they can pretty much coach themselves, right? And it's similar for the Notre Dame guys who the terminology, the chemistry that they have, the knowing what guys' jobs are on game day and what you expect out of your teammates. It's not easy to come in as a coach into that kind of defense. It's definitely much easier to come in my opinion, to a team where things are a little scrambled and you kind of set the stage and you set the roles, and you set the standard. When that's already set, you got to come in there knowing that, all right, I got to be able to elevate these guys in a way that's going to allow them to play to their strengths and do what they do well, do what they've been doing since, 6-7 years ago at Notre Dame, and it's been working. How can I add value? And I think you saw it in Glazner there, which is just, good on Glaze for kind of putting that out there, because that was Coach Collins' first year, and the defense didn't miss a beat with losing Landis, adding Finn Sullivan, Glaze, stepping up at times and being the number one defenseman, and allowing the defense to really, make the stops they needed to make. I think that's a credit to Coach Collins being able to manage that and manage those expectations and work with a guy like Glaze, who, he's pretty much a coach right at this point, with how he runs the defense. And I know that as far as the defense goes, when they kind of show that respect to a coach, it means a lot. And it shows that he was able, to really gel with them. Like I said, give them the respect they need, but also hold them to a standard when times were tough and he needed to get the most out of them.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. I mean, I think that's what's continuing to be exciting about the growth of pro lacrosse too. And you and I have talked about it. But you look at a lot of, other sports, and, so many players, right, are trying to continue to get better, continue to extend their careers on the field, off the field. You look at a guy like Brady, investing so much in his body and things like that. And when you get, these coaches that, can really make that impact, at the pro level, and trainers, making impact at the pro level. I want to give a shout out to Coach Casemeyer. There's a nice little article about him and, Brian Costabile, and kind of, helping Brian make that transition to having a great tournament. I think that's going to be an exciting, development in our sport too, when, you see players graduate college and they're the top of the top and the best of their game, but then 5, 7, 8 years later, where are they and how and who's helped them get there. So I think that's going to be pretty cool thing to see in lacrosse.
Definitely. I think that's, just a testament, like you're saying, to where the game's going. I know I saw a tweet today about Coach Staggs, and, he was, I think it was Axios interview, and Paul kind of mentioned it, how, he was coach for college for 27 years. And, talk about the respect that he has from his team and, the what they've been able to do the past 2 years. Obviously the Whips are a very talented team, but managing all those expectations on that team, managing the players that you have, getting the best out of those guys. That's where we talk about the pro level. And a guy like Staggs was mentioning is now he's being, acknowledged in the public more for what he's doing at the pro level. And maybe he wasn't getting that prior to that. We're going to keep seeing that development. And I think the teams that are going to be able to have coaches that are investing in developing their players in the offseason, like what are you doing, and what kind of programs, what kind of conversations are you having with your professional players that perhaps 5-10 years ago that wasn't even a thought. And I think that you're going to continue to see that develop in the teams and the programs in the PLL that are going to continue to invest in that. I think it's going to pay dividends down the line because it's just going to keep getting more competitive. Kids are going to come out of college and they'll be working harder on their crafts on their own, finding trainers, like a Sackman in the NBA, like guys like that are working on guys' games in the NBA when they're not, with their teams. They're not with the Lakers, not with the Timberwolves. What are they doing? Who are they working with? And what kind of strategy do they have built for the offseason? And I think that's going to continue to raise the game and elevate it to a place that we've really never seen it before.
Yeah, and I think, Jules, like you and I have spoken about this, and I think one thing we both, pride ourselves on is having an open mind, right, and being open to feedback. And I think, for players that continue to grow, whether you're in middle school or high school, whether you're in college or whether you're trying to make that jump to pro or, other pro guys, right? It's like if you're open to people talking, about your game, about your technique, you will just naturally keep getting better. You will be thinking about things to get you better. But if you're not, at some point, right, we all know that like that's going to lead to, maybe getting replaced. And I think that's, I know growing up, I've always been motivated by not wanting to be surpassed, by that next guy, and always wanting to be, the best I can be. So I think like it'll be a cool thing to see, and important, for players. And I think it's, I was thinking about it a little bit in terms of the way that some of our like youth club ball and like tournaments are structured. A lot of the parents out there, invest a lot of money through rising junior, rising senior year of high school, right? In terms of development and training and tournaments, right? And then as soon as player commits, as soon as the player gets to college, right, there is, I think, a big drop off in terms of, kind of investing in that game in the off season. It's not saying that you're not going to college and you're not getting great training from your coaches and you're not getting great training from your staff. But when you're not there, and with how NCAA rules are structured, what are you doing? If you're just going out and shooting a bucket of balls, you're going to get the work and you're going to get the reps, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to actually assess your own technique. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that you're actually going to be able to like think about and make the changes, because everyone knows that sometimes having an extra set of eyes can be really beneficial. And that's the kind of value add that players who want to keep getting better and want to be legit college players and want to play pro ball are going to have to keep doing.
Absolutely. I think it's, kind of an easy transition into talking about the championship game a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that went on. One of the main storylines of that game was obviously Zed and him kind of coming on in that fourth quarter and doing what he did. But, a guy like Zed, I think he fits the mold of someone that went to college and, obviously was an immensely talented player coming out of high school. But when he got to college, I think we talk about reading with the articles with Starge and what he says about him and what they did to invest in him academically and kind of prioritizing that, not over lacrosse in a way, but, just making sure that he had the resources and the ability to get the degree that, he ultimately went to college for. And I think that gets missed a little bit in terms of, the commitment you have during the school year at these universities, these high end, not just, I went to school like Rutgers, like the commitment there academically is high. You're talking about a Harvard, a UVA. These schools are a Georgetown. They're demanding a lot out of you, Duke, as far as academics go. And if you can't balance that, and if you can't find the time to put in the work outside of your academics, right, then you're just naturally not going to be, able to produce on the field and do as much on the field as you might want during your college career. And I think Zed is someone that perhaps maybe put more time in academically. And now that he's not, in university anymore, has more time to focus on his craft. And the free time he has is the same free time these kids have in these off seasons, right? These chunks of time during December, during summer break. What are you doing during that time to really maximize your game and put in the work? Because I think you see it with a guy like Zed. Now he's got the free time. He just shows up and he leads the PLL in scoring. Not that he couldn't have done that in college, but perhaps he was more focused on academics. When you talk about these coaches and these trainers in the offseason, it doesn't stop when the club circuit's over, right? When you get to college, that's really when it's time to sink your teeth in, find the time during the year that you have to really get better. I know for me, that time was December, right? It was definitely the summertime, but when we went home from December break, I think we kind of finished up, it was like December 7th, 8th, and I kind of got home the 10th. From December 10th to January 10th, that's where I was fine tuning everything from the fall with my trainer in the weight room and with my brothers on the field who were kind of the guys looking after me as far as helping me, and then coming back and really punching spring in the face. And I always made sure that was something I took pride in, because my coach, emphasized it so much. He was like, what are you going to do for the next month? You're either going to get worse or you're going to get better over this next month of time. We've worked out all fall. We've taught you guys the fundamentals. We've harped on different aspects. You've trained with your strength coach. Are you just going to lose that for the next month? Or are you going to take another step and come back in the spring ready to go? And I think guys, they kind of take their foot off the gas during the summertime, the winter time. And then during the school year, you're focused on academics sometimes, right? It's hard to find the time to put in extra work. I know I had to structure my schedule to make sure I had like 2 days during the week that were like blocks of time. I knew I was going to be on the field with myself or with, you know, a couple of my other teammates to work on those skills during the fall. But it's really the summertime and the wintertime where I got my full, you know, dose of extra work and, you know, improving the things I needed to improve to become the player I wanted to become.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've even found it with stuff like, you know, nutrition and some different things, like things that don't naturally come as like your loves or things that you love doing. Like it is important to build that structure and routine early on so that you can get in that groove, and then it will be, I think, more enjoyable from that. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you can kind of spark that, like where you're feeling such a way that like you don't want to lose that feeling, that's what kind of naturally gets you out into the field. Like for me, like I probably like middle of high school and like, you know, late high school, like going out to the field for me like became a thing that I really just enjoyed doing, to where like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to plan. Like I was just like, I got to get out there at some point today for an hour, hour and a half, you know, and I ended up doing that. And there's other things that I know right now that like don't come as naturally or easy for me, that I do have to try and start building in the time, building in the schedule, or else it does kind of go away. And so, you know, for the athletes out there that are maybe feeling like in these times of more freedom, summer, winter break, you know, you do have to make that structure, give yourself that routine so that you can prioritize it. And then, you know, as your body takes to it, as your mind takes to it, it will become more of a thing that you kind of, you know, don't necessarily have to do, but you want to do, you need to do, because like that's kind of, you know, fueling that passion that you and I have talked about. It's kind of feeding that thing that's, you know, inside of you. So I think it's like, I think it's super exciting. And I agree, like, you know, that winter break and that summer break was like, I wanted to get back to school and not be playing catch up. I wanted to be like able to take in the new things that like my coaches could teach me, or just do better earlier on instead of like delaying that process.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think the more that players can sink their teeth into this idea, and I know we talk about it, we'll continue to talk about it, like that's the differentiator, right? That's what's really going to separate you and allow you to become the player you thought you wanted to be in college. And ultimately, you know, there are so many guys in my class way better than me, talent wise, you know, guys that got to college who are way more talented than me, but they just weren't able to, you know, kind of just keep rising the ranks. Like you might have been able to shoot better than me when we were freshmen, but how many goals are you scoring by junior year with that same shooting stroke? Like, have you improved it? Have you learned to shoot in different ways or score in different ways than the same stroke you had freshman year? And it's just the reason you haven't is you just haven't put, you know, the time in during the winter, that block, during the summer, that maybe academically you were more driven and you didn't find those 2 days a week. Those things compound over time, and then 2 years go by, and some guys are just getting better each year. You know, I think kind of wrapping it up, a fun thing, and I talked about with you is just kind of who we thought, you know, really stood out in the tournament at each position. So I'll go first. I mean, obviously, you know, I think Zed was the MVP, obviously got MVP. I don't know specifically if that's MVP of the tournament or, you know, MVP of the championship game. So I'll kind of circle back to that. But, you know, talk about on the defensive side, you know, I thought Dunn, you know, was obviously the front runner for defensive player of the year. You know, I thought last year he was a guy that everyone knew that handles his matchups every time. He's been a guy that we've known about that for a long time. And you saw it time and time again this year. And I think, you know, a guy like Glazner is really right there with him as far as, you know, what he was able to do, kind of stepping up sometimes to be a number one defenseman, but also leading that defense, you know, with a new defender and Finn Sullivan there, and losing a guy like Landis, who's his number one last year. You know, talk about attack of the year. I think that's where Zed, you know, leading the tournament in scoring, doing what he did in the championship game and really stepping up, which honestly in the championship game to do what he did is just, we look at the performances, you know, in lacrosse over the last number of years. I don't know if there's another one that stands out in a single game, on a game that big, on a stage like that, that you can really attest to. There's a couple of them, but that's definitely up there, in my opinion. So midfielder of the year, I think, you know, obviously, you know, it's easy to choose Tom there with what Tom's able to do, but I think another guy, you know, I think, you know, perhaps you could look at it like two ways, you know, defensive midfielder, I think a guy like Jack Neer, in my opinion, what he's able to do, and the value add that he has to his team over the course of the season, and stepping up another big time, you know, way and come crunch time. I think Jack Neer is a guy that I really look at to say, like, perhaps not, the most flashy, not the most goal scoring, but value add as a midfielder on a unit this season. With this tournament, like I think he's right there. Talk about face-offs. I think it's easy to talk about Joe Nardella. What he was able to do, he's been doing that for a long time. I know I played with Joe when I was in college, my freshman year. I remember in the fall, our coach said he was our number one midfielder, offensive midfielder as a face-off guy, and that everyone needed to step their game up because our Fogo was our best midfielder. And that was, I don't know if that's a shot on our team at the moment in time or if that's a, praise for Joe or both. But, I think that what he's able to do with the ball in his stick, once he wins the draw, what he was able to do to kind of improve from box for this season, which he admitted was a huge boost for him. He's on a rampage right now as far as, proving people wrong, continuing to elevate his game and always putting in the work. So I think I was a no-brainer with him. And then, I think Joe was the MVP of the tournament. Honestly, I think, the ability for him to play at the level he did the entire time and kind of come in clutch down the stretch, stepping up in that championship game. I think, not to take anything away from Zed. I thought Zed was championship game MVP, but I think talk about someone that was able to do it the entire tournament. And if they didn't have him, I don't think that would have been the same tournament. Is Joe Nardella. So I enjoyed watching the tournament and everyone there, but I thought Joe really stuck out to me as a guy like that just really put on a show and demonstrated that he was above and beyond everyone else.
Yeah, totally. I do echo that with Joe. And I think the reason it also stands out to me is, take the running clock, take the shorter quarters, the shot clock and the possessions. Like, I think there was that one moment where Zed scored a goal and then Nerds came right back down and popped another one in. And like you could feel the momentum swing. And I think like to pull off runs like that, like having a dominant face-off guy is so big.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, it's not only the ability to get momentum on the offensive side of the field, but it's the ability to give your defense that rest too, and your defensive middies. And, if you're winning balls to yourself too, it's less on your wings. Obviously Earhart, does a phenomenal job on the wings as well. But, just like, it takes off some of that pressure that isn't always quantifiable, on the other parts of the field. And so, I think his impact was tremendous on the entire tournament. I also play with him in Atlanta, and he is a phenomenal teammate, awesome guy to have around. I thought Blaze Reardon, did an incredible job all tournament. And I think the way that he handled himself after that first game and, the mic'd up stuff, I think was really admirable, and also just, motivating for me as a teammate of like guy like I want to keep going in the battle with, and I think what he's done, for our team is really impressive. And Kyle is an amazing goalie as well. And, he's been locking it down for their defense too. So definitely want to give him a shout out as well. Defensively, I do agree in terms of Matt Dunn. I think he handled all his matchups extremely well. I think, even after talking to him last week on our last episode and hearing how, even if he would want that number one guy all the time, maybe there's a game or two where it's a better fit for another guy. I think that also speaks to his humbleness, as an athlete, and ability to, keep doing what's best for the team, even though like he's that, number one cover guy in a lot of, situations. I also want to give a shout out to, Jack Rowlett, because I feel like he's someone that really like, and I saw it playing with him last year, but then just having to watch these 3 weeks, like seeing the way he, ran around the field and, took on matchups, like competed against, some of these guys, like he's just like the ultimate warrior. And, that really, really, I think showed. And, he's someone, and even some of the ground balls that he would pick up and some of the plays and throwing checks while, not always sacrificing position, but, definitely taking chances here or there. Just like someone that I think stuck out to me. I think, Haas and Schreiber, I think we're on another level throughout the tournament. I think obviously, big shout out to what Zed did throughout. I love seeing, Josh Byrne, step up in the last couple games. But, just in general, and always, seeing what Rambo does. I mean, I just love the way that Rambo facilitates the offense, and works off of the guys and steps up and, has his swagger when needed. And then also, is able to, let other guys do their thing too. And I think that's really cool to see in a, offensive leader as well. So it was a great tournament. It was, obviously bittersweet to watch, but, as someone who loves lacrosse, it was exciting, and it fires me up. I'm sure it fires you up for next summer, and just to, to get back to it, keep rehabbing, and get after it next summer.
Yeah, there's obviously, like you said, so many tremendous players in the tournament, and it's exciting to watch as a fan, but also someone, both of us who are pretty competitive guys, to feel that motivation. Like, we wanted to be out there and playing with those guys and be on the big stage. And we have a long off season now, and we've had the kind of the 3 weeks where maybe last year, you come off this kind of tournament, like your body's hurting, and like mentally, when you don't, win the championship and you lose a big time game, like those things kind of carry over a little bit and kind of have that prolonged, all right, I want to get back into it. This is the first off season I felt like I'm fresh. I'm fired up, and I want to, get to my training right away. And just because we haven't been playing, and that's kind of a, fun for me, a fun, different challenge, and exciting. So I'm definitely pumped to kind of see how that kind of goes over the next few months and continue to build into 2021.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Appreciate you checking out episode 5. Episodes 1 through 4 are available as well if you want to tune into those. And stay tuned, as we'll hopefully be rolling out some new series and new episodes in the coming weeks. Thanks for all your support and feedback. Jules, as always, I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, brother.